recording. Greetings, welcome to the Transforming Assessment webinar series. Today is a joint effort with the eAssessment Association based in the UK, but international. Today's session is on the eAssessment Awards, and we have got selected winners going to give a showcase and panel discussion at the end. Today we are having Paul. You are going to introduce the session. Would you like to begin, please?
Hi, morning or afternoon, Matthew, for you. Hi, everyone.
Yes.
So, morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Paul Muir. My day job is the head of technology enabled assessment at the British Council, but I'm here in my capacity as one of the board members of the eAssessment Association. And as Matthew just said, this session is all about showcasing some of the winners from our International eAssessment Awards from a couple of weeks ago. So we had a really competitive field. I think upwards of 50 entries, and to get shortlisted was a significant achievement. So the winners have really achieved to get here and to talk about their achievements today. For those of you who aren't aware of what the eAssessment Association is, it is a voluntary organisation. We have not-for-profit, but we have three major goals: to provide professional support and facilitating debate and discussion for everyone involved in eAssessment and assessment, to try and create and communicate positive contributions around technology, and certainly being a forum for innovation as well is something that I really hope the eAssessment Association can do, and help develop statements of good practice for suppliers and consumers of eAssessment technologies. So we're aware as board members, we have some experience, but the eAssessment Association is stronger for the 3,000 plus people we have involved with it, and obviously people on the call as well today. So we're a board of 16. We have 28 sponsors, but always looking for other people to sponsor to get engaged with the eAssessment Association. So please reach out to myself, or I think Matt Winfield is also, who's our CEO, who's also on the call today. So we'll have to talk to us. We have as you'd expect, we have a presence. If you want to find out more about us, we're on Twitter. We have just over 3,000 followers on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn. A lot of our posts and blogs and comments and opinions will appear on LinkedIn, so follow us there. And also within there, we have an EAA members discussion group as well. We publish case studies, we have newsletters, we have articles frequently published, and we have been doing podcasts and webinars, and obviously the events as we do as well. And we're talking about today, the 2022 International eAssessment Awards. So the annual eAssessment Awards, it's as I said earlier on, it's a really significant opportunity for organisations to get involved, and it recognises excellence across the eAssessment space. And we'll come on to the awards categories in a minute. As Matthew said earlier on, we've got 3 of the winners from the awards in this session today. That's 3 of 10. So actually, it's a small portion of what we can do, and you'll certainly be able to look out for more opportunities to hear from the other winners through the EA channels later in the year. British Council this year, in my role, British Council, we've sponsored the awards this year as the headline sponsor, so we're really keen to do that. Part of what we do at the British Council is all around innovation, all around assessment delivery, and making sure that globally technology doesn't become a barrier to people having access to these educational opportunities. So that's part of what we do, and it's why we were so keen to work with Matt and to work with the eAssessment Association to sponsor the awards this year. And as the comment here from Matt says, we're really proud of these awards. They get really good feedback. The event is brilliant. I know it's obviously a long way from Australia, but hopefully in better times around COVID, you guys will be able to come across and take part in person as well. So, and I think it is all about, we touched on already, it's about sharing stories. It's about sharing stories of innovation around research and around really what are quite transformational projects. And definitely cross borders. We are a UK-based organisation, but we don't see ourselves as that. We're definitely very much internationally focused. The winners you'll hear from today, from India, from Australia, and from the UK. So a huge breadth there already as well. You'll see on the screen now some of the winners, or the winners from this year. We're going to hear today from the best international implementation, so NEBOSH are going to talk to us today. Best summative assessment project, we're going to hear from Maulana, Abul, Kalam, Azad, University of Technology. And we're going to hear from the most innovative use of technology and assessment from ACER as well, with ACER Signum. So obviously on the screen there, you can see there are multiple categories. As I said earlier on, you'll have the opportunity to hear from those people later in the year as we go through and hear from all the award winners. We also have sort of personal awards as well. So this year there were 2 new awards. We had a Best Practitioner of the Year award, which was won by a head teacher from a school in Oxford. We had another award for a team award, because sometimes it's always difficult. I think if anything like me, it's very difficult sometimes to say, to focus on one person. So we had a team award. TUV Rhineland had the opportunity to, they won that award. And then we had a Lifetime Contribution Award, which was won by Dr. Graham Otwood, which was very well deserved. That's enough from me, because you're here to hear about the winners. So I had the pleasure to introduce the Best Summative Assessment Project, and I apologize for my pronunciation, but Maulana, Abul, Kalam, Azad, University of Technology are the winners, and we're going to hear from Manish, Mohta from Learning Spiral.
Thank you, Paul, for the introductions, and I think the pronunciation was bang on. And hello and greetings to the August gathering today in this webinar. Myself, Manish, Mohta, founder and director, Learning Spiral, and I would wish to take you through what we were able to achieve in the midst of COVID at Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology. And this is a university which is situated in the state of West Bengal in India. So in the midst of the second COVID wave, when the COVID was just about to begin and cases were rising, there was a dual challenge in the state of West Bengal. The challenge was that not just the COVID, but also the state of West Bengal had elections coming around the corner. And as a result of which, there was a mandate to the university that they needed to conduct the summative examinations of their semesters, which would lead to degrees for their students in a matter of 15 to 20 days. We need to remember that this is a 70-year-old institution with more than 150,000 students, and this is an activity which, even with their best of efforts, the university was earlier able to do with not less than 40 plus days. And the benefits were clearly identified from the starts. So of course, the university wanted to reduce the test to transcript time drastically. They wanted to enable students to participate from home because of the COVID restrictions and the scenario. And of course, by adoption of the digital technology and the platform, they wanted to make sure that the assessments were definitely more reliable, and there should be a correlation between the digital platform delivered results as well as the physical, what the trend they used to see with students. There needs to be a correlation between the results for the project to be considered a success. And of course, being a COVID year, the university was keen to reduce the cost, because it was difficult for them to also take a hefty fees from the students. Being a public funded university, this was a critical benefit which they were looking forward to. So how large was the assessment drive? To give you a feel of how big this examination drive for this university this was, and which is quite typical for many of the large universities in India. So the total tests delivered annually by the university over 2 semesters is close to 1.5 million. The total test takers, 150,000 students sitting twice, so you have a 300,000 student pool. And the total number of paper setters to set papers for the variety of subjects graded against difficulty levels, the number of marks, rubrics, etc., topics, is close to 3,000 plus. And a bank is created of nearly 200,000 students, 200,000 question items, from which the system is able to create these papers automatically. On a daily basis during the drive, to be able to crash the timelines, the number of tests or assessments which took place was around 100,000 to 120,000, and some of the shifts were as big as 40,000 to 50,000 students taking the particular assessment at one single time. And of course, to make all of this a success, a very dedicated 250 member support team was set up, which was receiving calls 24/7 through an IVR hotline. And all of this, we were able to achieve the success only because of the support center which got created. And I will speak a little bit more about that subsequently. So what were the changes? What was the impact that we were able to get? So at the end of the whole drive, 99.8% attendance was achieved. This was a record for the university over the entire years. This was even higher than what the physical attendance used to be. Student grievances, which used to be close to 10 to 15% or more, in the form of students applying for re-evaluation of their scripts, that came close to nil. The test to transcript time, not to mention, was reduced by 50%, and total costs, because there was a huge amount of costs involved in the logistics, the paper, the printing, the moving around of the scripts, and all of that led to a reduction in costs as well of close to 50%. Of course, being a digital system where the authoring and the release of papers were happening at real time, the risk of paper leakage, etc., which earlier existed in the physical system, was almost eliminated. But most importantly, in the context of the Indian universities, when such a large assessment drive is going on, most of these colleges and teachers and the faculty, they get involved totally in the conduction of these exams. So for that entire period, the colleges do not function. There is no learning happening. Teachers are not teaching. And by saving 2 months or more in the year, we were able to give 20% more time to the faculty to actually devote to learning and making sure that students are able to cover the curriculum, which is always a challenge, especially in the COVID year. So what made the drive so successful? So in hindsight, we felt that the secret sauce lay in the fact that every one of the stakeholders was, taken into confidence. We made sure that they were part of the whole process, and of course, the technical support with the 250 people, dedicated team which was created. They made sure that the pilots, the load testing, and the paced rollout all were done in a manner that anybody who was new to the system, they were handheld, their queries were answered, any issues which were coming up, they were resolved, as a result of which, over a period of multiple mandatory mock tests, students as well as the invigilators, the proctors, the college staff, they all became very comfortable with the system, so that on the actual live date, there was less panic. And I think that was the real reason why we were able to handle such a large load. Of course, to keep the sanctity and the gravity of the entire assessment results, and to make sure that they are actually representative, there was live proctoring, which was assisted with the AI. And for all the final semester exams, which would lead to the degree, there were 2 device-based proctoring with 360-degree views. Being a public university, there was also, the audit trail and reporting, which needed to be kept for each and every instance. So now I'll quickly take you through some of the screenshots of the platform to give you a feel of what all was done to make sure that we could handle the load as well as the requirements. So, of course, proctoring was enabled. There was live proctors. More than 2,000 proctors were there. So the proctoring also had to have various levels. So there were proctors, there was then the supervisors on the proctors, then there were chief proctors. The college and the institutes were able to also visualize what was happening, and they could jump in case of any issues, in case of any intervention which was required. The AI triggers, which was in the form of a risk score, they were available, all compactly arranged, and because the teachers and the faculty and the users were well trained, we were able to manage both the system as well as the human interface, which is important in a drive such large as this. 360-degree views, as we talked about, so that we were able to do. And of course, we had to proctor, as I said, even the deployed proctors, because with 2,000 proctors, you need to make sure that the proctors are doing their job properly. So we had detailed reports about who is logging in, which proctors are looking at the screen, whether they are looking at it or whether they are not looking at the screen, what kind of messages they are sending, what is happening. If escalations had to be raised, then the proctors could raise it for the next level. If there was a technical difficulty, then again that could be raised through the system to the a certain pool who were more technically savvy about solving these problems, so that things could be resolved. Because a large number of assessments in India are both, written by hand, descriptive type questions. So the system had to support both the auto-graded multiple choice as well as upload of handwritten answers against particular questions. And once these handwritten answers came into the system, they were immediately fed to teachers and evaluators who were able to evaluate it digitally on the screen, so that all of the activities for the evaluation could be done in a streamlined and proper manner. Both the statistical analysis of correlations between the results found with this system, as well as the performance of these students in the earlier semesters when the exams were physical, that was found to be significant. Plus, being such a large bank, statistical analysis of the question items, all of that was carried out to make sure that the results were well accepted, and the thing became a success. So with that, I would thank you for listening to me, and for allowing me this occasion to share with you what we were able to deliver and do at Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology. Thank you.
Thanks, Manish. That's really informative, and I like the idea of secret source, as you said in there. I think everyone needs to know what that is to help us move on and to get that. So moving on very quickly. So we're now going to hear from NEBOSH, who won the Best International Implementation Award, and we're going to hear from Diarp, who is the COO. So over to you, Dee.
Paul, thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and presenting on behalf of NEBOSH and tell you a little bit more about our journey. Again, a very similar story instigated by COVID. And what I'm going to be telling you about in the next 10 minutes is how we move very swiftly to an open book assessment. And our mantra was leaving no learner behind. We were looking for something that was really going to be accessible to every learner wherever they were in the world. And this was because when COVID hit us in the UK in March 2020, a significant number of our assessments were paper-based. They were structured response question papers that were taken in the traditional examination hall with invigilators. And all of those were immediately cancelled for all the obvious reasons. And we had thousands of learners stranded as a result that couldn't complete qualifications. And these qualifications were in health and safety. So the irony there was, at a time when we needed these people delivering in workplaces around the world more than ever before, they couldn't complete the qualifications. So we really needed an agile and a swift solution. We did have plans to offer digital eAssessments, but they were quite in the distant future at that point. But we obviously made this a strategic priority to really fast track that. And what we focused on was our highest volume registrations, which was our general certificate qualifications, which we offer a national variant and an international variant. And we took a decision pretty quickly in the process, around April 2020, to make a permanent assessment change. We've got a brilliant relationship with our regulator, the Scottish Qualifications Authority, And they really worked with us to achieve that in unprecedented timelines. So the reason we took the decision to bring in a permanent replacement was to really grasp the opportunity to do something better and really reduce the burden on our learners and our learning partners that would have been involved if we'd brought in an interim solution and then changed back again. So all the usual checks and balances were in there to make sure we got the right assessment for the qualification, that we could ensure that continuity, that generalizability, that we were going to be using the same evidence to ensure we were doing reliable awarding of that qualification. As I said, the key here was the speed of response, and we absolutely wanted to make sure that we reached any learner anywhere in the world. So all the checks and balances in place, as I say. We worked really hard with our regulator. The first meeting we had with our regulator when we started to talk about our decision to replace the structured response with an open book type assessment was the 1st of May. We did our formal proposal to the regulator on the 13th of May and got approval to make that change on the 13th of June. So absolutely unprecedented timescales. And I really like the comment that Paul made about the awards, that this could only be achieved with a team response. You know, the whole team at NEBOSH absolutely came together in an amazing way to deliver this. So yeah, really worked hard with our regulator, and we were able to actually put the first assessment out in August of 2020. And one of the requirements that the regulator had was around authenticity of learners, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a short while. But just to give an overview of what our assessment proposal was to our regulator and the delivery of that, it was a change to an open book examination. And the reason we chose that was based around that decision to make our assessment better. And we believe this approach could really give a much more authentic assessment that really allowed our learners to demonstrate specifically not only what they know, but what they could do. So the open book assessment allowed us to give a scenario-based introduction to the assessment, and then use a series of questions with a Socratic approach to really drill down not just into their knowledge, but their application of that knowledge to really get that vocational response that we were looking for. At that time, because of the lack of sophistication of our systems, we went for a 24-hour completion window to really give the accessibility to the time zones across the world. We did a significant amount of work making absolutely sure that we were keeping constructs at the heart of the assessment, that we were absolutely assessing the same learning outcomes as the previous assessment. And the beauty of the new assessment was we could actually get greater breadth and depth in the assessment criteria as well. Because it was open book, yes, the learners could access textbooks, their research, their course materials, and there was a higher level of trust involved in that. But the first barrier to that was making sure, as I say, that we were asking questions in a very structured and scaffolded way where the learners had to apply their knowledge to the scenario. So we did have to work on overcoming some misperceptions that this was going to be an easier approach. We did really have to enforce that learners were still going to have to prepare and revise in exactly the same way, and they wouldn't just be able to find the answers to these questions in their notes or online. And we gave some guidance around the word count, which was around about 3,000 words to get the sufficient amount in place to get a good pass in this assessment. Again, operating at speed, we had to look for a very quick response to the delivery mechanism, and our technical team did an amazing job in implementing the Moodle platform. An amazing amount of work went into getting really good guidance, not only on the assessment, but on how to access the platform, access the question paper, upload the answers. And in the first cohorts, we made sure that learners could submit not just online, but they could submit handwritten responses. They could access the assessment on mobile phones to really achieve that any learner and anywhere. As I said, one of the requirements from our regulator was on authenticity of learners because of this high level of trust. And for the first sitting, we introduced a closing interview, which our learning partners really contributed to and enabled us to do this. So every learner on completion of their assessment was required to undertake, and continues to be required to undertake, a closing interview by the learning partner. So we give a question set to the learning partner. The learning partner has the learner's script, and they ask some questions around their responses to really drill down into that. That closing interview also gives the ability to be able to do an ID check and to make sure that there is nobody assisting in the room with that learner. So we launched, as I say, our first assessment in the August of 2020. We had around 8,000 learners completing that assessment, and like the previous speaker, we had a much better attendance rate on that assessment as well. We now do these assessments monthly, and we're up to sometimes 16,000 learners a sitting. And our challenge now, our ongoing challenge, is around malpractice, because of that higher level of trust. And we know in some of the areas we work in, there's a high stakes attached to our qualifications, and as I said, that high level of trust gives the opportunity. Excuse me. So we write a brand new scenario and question set for every assessment. I explained about the closing interview. After our first 2 sittings, we introduced Turnitin. So all of the learner submissions go through that system, and that's been a really effective tool in highlighting where there is some common content, and our ethical practice team can work through those and decide if malpractice has been undertaken or not. For the closing interviews, we're able to jump on those calls with our learning partners, and also our regulators jumped on some of those calls as well. And as I mentioned with the closing interview, that really is a good tool to identify whether the learner that we've got on screen at that point is the learner that actually completed their assessment. So like with any form of assessment, with any awarding organisation, the malpractice aspect remains a challenge for us. And we're really now working hard on, and this is going to be, Matt, our next assessment for the awards next year, we're really now working hard on linking into formative assessment checks as an additional quality assurance, but also a further check on malpractice. Where we do find malpractice, we're pretty harsh on our sanctions and penalties. Where we won't award the qualification, and in some cases there are 3-year, 5-year bans on the learners, sometimes lifetime bans. And where we find any learning staff have been complicit, we take the appropriate action against those, with the extreme being removal of accreditation of that learning partner. So we work very hard to continue to maintain the authenticity and the integrity of our assessments. So we continue to learn. We are thankful for the challenges that COVID presented us, because it's enabled us to not just be more resilient, but to really revisit our assessments and be better. And in the whole ethos of the Assessment Association and the awards, which I'm very grateful to be a part of and had the opportunity to, to put NEBOSH forward for it, we continue to focus on, the best assessments that contribute to the learning journey, and using technology to really enhance that journey. It's my pleasure to be here with you all today, and thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Dee. And again, I had the privilege actually of judging this category as well for the awards, and NEBOSH demonstrated, I think, up against real pressure, the ability to change. And I think all of us obviously were affected by COVID, but how NEBOSH reacted and what they did for their students was really commendable, and very worthy winners of the award. So moving on, now we're going to hear from the Australian Council for Educational Research, or ACER as they're known, and I will hand over to them for their 10 minutes.
Thanks very much for that. Hi everybody, my name is Jacob. I'm here with my colleague Ammar. We're very delighted to be here today. We were thrilled to win the Most Innovative Use of Technology in Assessment Award recently. And today we're here to talk to you and show you a little bit about Signum, which is the online standard setting application that we built. I just want to begin, I guess, by talking about standard setting in general. So when thinking about a test or assessment, we often need to think about what the pass mark will be. And people often think of 50%, quite common in universities, which of course is a scaled 50% score a lot of the time. In professional contexts where we work, people often go higher because they want a higher standard, but of course that depends on the difficulty of the items in the test. So 70% on one test might be equivalent in standard to 60% on a different test. And there are other reasons why pass marks are set based on, say, places available. But we do a lot of work with medical specialty colleges, and this work came out of that, where we have to help medical specialties determine what the pass mark should be on a lot of tests. And so we employ formal methods, standard setting methods, which use statistical analysis and harness the judgment, the expert judgment of experts on questions to determine what a pass mark should be. So the way we used to do it was quite convoluted. We used to do it in face-to-face workshops with pens and paper. Prior to COVID, we were beginning to run standard setting virtually. However, that resulted in turning, Word and PDF exams into Excel spreadsheets, and then having to share those with people via email or secure file transfer sites, getting them to download them, fill out their ratings on questions, and then re-upload them back to us before we could analyze the data. There was many steps to that, a lot of security issues, and it was very hard to handle complicated assessment formats, which we were used to dealing with as well with medical exams. So Ammar and I set out to develop a platform called Signum, which I'll pass to Ammar to demo right now.
Thank you, Jacob. And I'll share my screen and give you a live demonstration of the Signum standard setting platform. So on my left, you'll see the Content Manager login, which looks very similar to what a standard setting judge or an expert or panelist will see on the right with the panelist login. I'm going to use panelist, expert, or judge or examiner interchangeably. So when I log in as a content manager to run a standard setting session, it's going to preload all the data, and each of these horizontal bars is a standard setting session or study. And to create a study, there's only 3 steps initially. I'll show you what content typically looks like. Now, this is mock content. This is non-secure example content, but this is typical of what we get from a medical college. You can see it's quite complicated. There are diagrams, there's metadata, there's often item keys, marking rubrics, all sorts of things which we have to handle. So the way we handle that is we screenshot the exam, and then there are 3 steps. So depending on the specialty college, they'll prefer a different type of standard setting study. So I'll show you what ANGOF yes no looks like. And this is an anatomy exam. So I'm going to name the session anatomy. And then to do as a content manager is upload all these screenshots and then click launch session. And now it's creating that standard setting study. So all those things that we did manually are now all automated. Here is my study. I'm going to add myself as an examiner, and of course there would be more than just one. There would be maybe 10 or so in that order, but I'll just add myself for now. And now I'm an examiner or expert judge, and then I can log in and I'll see these instructions here. So one of the issues, of course, is people forgetting what they need to do and what standard setting is. So they're immediately greeted by instructions. And the beauty of this is the content manager has a live dashboard where they can monitor all progress. So the panelists can go through and judge, would a minimally proficient candidate get this item right, yes or no? And you can see the content manager can track everyone live on the dashboard or show the panelists their live judgments during a workshop or session. A panelist might find an issue with the item. They might say, well, that's not actually, the key is incorrect. Answer is incorrect here. And that shows up on the live dashboard as well. So people can comment, everything is live. Not only that, it's actually possible to switch the type of study that's being run mid-study. So suppose we need to run a bookmark study. Well, I'm going to take that exact same data and switch over to the bookmark method. So now that same session data, instead, when the person logs in, they're going to be greeted by the instructions and an audit item booklet. So The bookmark method is where you place the items in empirical difficulty order, and you invite all the judges or experts to move up and down the ordered item booklet and consider where on this scale they think the minimum benchmark is, or that minimum proficiency level is. And this is the first platform to have a virtual ordered item booklet to actually implement and operationalize the bookmark method virtually. And it's the same sort of thing. The content manager gets a live dashboard. They can see where all the panelists are placing their bookmark. The panelists might change their mind. And in this case, now the panelist thinks that the cut score should be here. Not only that, the entire interface can be translated into any left to right language. So I'll show you briefly what that looks like for a different type of study called this one's called a pairwise study, and this is secure content, so I won't reveal any more. But you can see the entire interface is in Indonesian. So for one study called the International Standard Setting Study at ACER, we had over 60 panelists from 10 different countries. We had the interface in English and French as well. And this study was done in Indonesian. So I'll hand back to Jacob.
Thanks, Ammar. I'll just wait for those slides to come back, but I hope you can see this platform for us really was a way of operationalizing the standard setting, which we just said was best practice. And people often found workarounds in person or online to make it work, but we really built the system to handle a whole bunch of different methodologies. We found we had much engagement from our panelists and examiners, people that work, say, doctors all day and do this once or twice a year. Found the system really easy to use. They could do it, in any time of day, on any device, and they found it quick and quite straightforward. It also enhanced our data security. We're always worried about people, even using secure file transfer platforms, having to download any kind of content to a local machine and then re-upload something. It was a massive security concern. So this way, there's no downloading occurring, no more paper. And the product design was fascinating because Ammar's also, as being an amazing coder, is also an assessment expert at ACER and does a lot of work with medical colleges too. So he understood the needs of the users, the needs of the judges, which I think really helped us. And for that reason, Ammar and I really obsessed over the user experience of this platform. It had to meet all of the demands of the users. So we did multiple rounds of testing to make sure that anything that people wanted to be able to do, they could do. It's made things possible that weren't possible before. So, as Ammar said, over people from 10 different countries. And this is where, yes, this was instigated by COVID, but we'd never go back now. This platform, it's such an efficient and effective way of conducting standard setting with people anywhere in the world. And it's become a tool for other contexts as well. So this was a standard setting platform, but it's now being used for almost anything where we want to collect rated judgments. We say, get people to rate whether they think questions map to different parts of frameworks. We even use them in workshops with content experts. So you would have seen there's all these extra complicated settings you can set. One around security, you might want to run quite a complicated study, or one where security is really important. So you have a high level of security for the passwords, and you can email people directly, but you can also scale it right back and say, we're all on the same, even if we're in a face-to-face workshop, we're going to get you to log in on your local device to do some standard setting and to learn how the process works. So I guess I'll stop there. Thank you for listening, and thanks again to the association for the award. We're thrilled to win it and delighted to be here today.
Hi, Paul. Are you there?
Yep. I am. Yes, right. I was doing the normal thing for these calls where you go on mute and realizing that after I started.
Yeah, no worries.
So again, thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Ammar, for that presentation from ACER. So again, one of the things you said, I think a comment you made there was we're not going back. I think COVID, and I think we'll all appreciate, a lot of people's risk appetite before COVID for certain things was much lower. And I think with COVID, obviously, change sometimes requires something significant, something exceptional to happen to make us move. And I think we've seen that on a lot of projects, not just the winners here, but other ones we looked at as part of the eAssessment Association Awards and the judging of that. We saw that a lot. People have done this thing, they've moved to a new solution, but actually students love it, and it's a much better way of doing things. It's still secure. It still meets all the requirements around assessment and validity and security. And I think we're going to, I think, comments like we're not going back, or we're going to see hybrid approaches to this in the future are certainly very common now. I'm aware, Matthew, I don't know how we want to do this. Obviously, we've had questions come in the chat, and I think our panelists have been really, very good of actually answering some of them as we've gone through the sessions. But what I'm going to do is, I appreciate not everyone would have looked through the chat as we've gone through, so I'm going to pick out a few questions for each presentation, and we'll start with Learning Spiral and Manish, if that's okay. So Yvonne, I'm not sure if you want to ask your question on microphone, or I can answer it for you. But one of the questions that came from Yvonne was around the cultural differences, and what difference did that make to your success, Manish, for your project in India?
So yes, being such a large cohort, there were students from a variety of backgrounds, as well as cultural diversity was present. There were cases wherein the face was covered, there was a veil, they were a little apprehensive about being photographed, the AI detection, etc. Those cases were there. There were issues of women not being too comfortable with continuous videography which was going on. Even with many of the students from northeast parts of the country, where there were some elements, religious sentiments about whether this videography will be what will happen to this videography, and there were a lot of apprehensions which people had around this. But most of them were resolved, because during the mock sessions these surfaced, and the colleges and the institutes, as well as the faculty at the university, they held a number of webinar sessions specifically targeted to remove these apprehensions from the students. And I think that's how we were able to overcome the challenges which the diversity posed.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think that's always been a challenge. I think obviously in a country the size of India as well, the urban versus rural and everything else that we see across the world as well, how you make sure that something is accessible as possible. And I think that's to the follow-up question is from Mike, was how was digital accessibility of the assessments for disabled students or students with access arrangements ensured? Was that something you had to encounter?
Oh yes, in fact, it was definitely envisaged that there would be a large bunch of students with special needs, and those needs could be maybe because of their financial background, or could be because of some challenges in terms of ability to access. There were, of course, number of students who were also blind, or had challenges in seeing things on screen. So a variety of steps were taken. For a number of people who were from varying financial backgrounds, for them the examination fees was waived off, and a certain allowances were given to be able to compensate them for data, access to data, as well as rental of device of a mobile phone. Those things were compensated for. For those with physical challenges, they were definitely provided extra time, just like they got during the physical assessments. And they were also provided two options, that there were district government centers which were available. If they wanted, they could go there if they were very, very challenged, or they could get a scribe in case of blind students to get approved by the university, or usually the university provided one of their staff as a scribes. So they were, taken care of this, where the scribe was trained. Most of these students were also mapped to a particular set of trained proctors, so that unnecessary red flags which could create anxiety for these students by the AI algorithms confusing them with those who did not have to have concessions. So all of that was taken care to ensure that they were not left behind, or not treated at par, and did not get the same opportunity. So these were some of the steps which got taken.
Thank you for that, Manish. I think with yeah, there was I think there's a World Bank report came out last year that talked about the digital divide, and it's a phrase that's been used. I think we heard a lot at the conference a few weeks ago as well. It's really important that, I think, as you've demonstrated, that we make sure that anything we do with technology doesn't become a barrier to people being able to access assessment, but then also it doesn't become a barrier to people achieving their best potential. So I think it's really commendable, the work you've done, and to make sure that doesn't become an issue. I'm aware we've got about 12 minutes left, so I'm going to move on to questions to NEBOSH now and to Dee. So one of the questions asked here from Yvonne was, what foresight to make the permanent change was there? So sorry, I'll start again. Was there something already in the pipeline before this big change? Obviously, it was a significant change for you, Dee. Was it something that was already in the pipeline, or was it something that COVID sort of made you change direction?
Yeah, great question, Paul. It was COVID. We had in the pipeline thoughts to be, moves for online assessment. That probably would have started with online marking, but no, this change was absolutely driven by COVID and the fact that we had learners stranded. So yeah, we started from ground zero and had to do that agile response. Yeah, and we're very grateful. It's one of the positives that has come out. It's great to hear other speakers and other stories that are similar. It really gave sort of the push that we needed to move into this space. And beyond that now, we're looking across all of our assessments to see how we can implement lessons learned and do similar things with all of our assessments across all our qualifications. And as you said, Paul, learners love it. We've even had some learners come back and say, this absolutely is continuing my learning journey. It's great assessment. It really makes sense. It really is replicating what I do in a workplace. Yeah, so we're looking for the lessons learned and implementation across other assessments now.
I was going to ask, I know it was asked a question, what is next for you now? What's the next natural step? Is it something that's on a slower pace? Obviously, what you did, you had to do really quickly, for obvious reasons, but is there now a sort of more measured plan in place going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think yeah, I think the reason that we were able to operate at such pace was the great relationship we had and have with the regulator, but it was also because we had paused so many of the projects in the organisation at that time. We had people working at home because of COVID. Yeah, there was a pause on a lot of development work. That really gave us the ability for the whole organisation to focus on what we needed to deliver the open book assessment. Now we're back in a more normal working in a business as usual space. Yeah, it's a slower pace. We are literally now looking at our whole technical transformation and what we need to do across the business to bring. We've got quite a lot of different systems delivering different parts of our business, and we're looking at what technical transformation do we need to integrate, bring all of that together. And within that, and core in that, is our assessment platform. So we now want to look at, and it's great hearing other speakers on this, we're now looking at what is the best assessment platform to deliver, this range of digital assessment that keeps learners at the heart of it, and to deliver, really effective online marking and the bolt-ons for proctored and AI solutions as well. But yeah, as you know, a big change like that takes time, and we're very much at the specification, the information gathering stage to make sure that we absolutely get that right.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. Matt, if you are still on the call, do you want to ask your question in person? Because I'm sure you're not shy.
Yeah, of course. No, very happy to. And thank you everyone for joining us. So I'm Matt Wingfield, the Chief Executive of the EAA. I was just curious, and this is a question I ask a lot. So apologies. I think Dee, you had me ask this question at the conference as well. But I'm curious about what advice the speakers would give in relation to introducing change for other organisations, because change is never easy. So is there a single piece of advice that the three speakers would offer for an organisation that is thinking about introducing e-assessment or a change in the way that they undertake their assessments?
Manish, I can see you put some comments already. Manish, do you want to go first, or?
Right, I just put it on the chat, but I'll summarize. So, in my opinion, I think involvement of the stakeholders from day one needs to be totally ensured. We cannot avoid making them part of every single, decision, small or big, which we are taking. And I think for us, the trained help desk, which was accessible 24/7 with enough bandwidth to tackle both the students and all other stakeholders. This became our early alarm system, and also it made sure that all stakeholders became used to and comfortable with the new system and the new processes, and their apprehensions were removed. And we had a lot of mock sessions, nearly 10 per student, and similarly for all other stakeholders. And these mock sessions were relatively low stake environments with no constraint of time, and there was less panic, and so people just became comfortable. And I think biggest challenge is that people becoming comfortable to the new process, which otherwise they feel that it's not something which will succeed. So that's I think very, very critical. And on a device front, I think the usage of mobiles in India, I think all of our activities could be done on the mobile. And I think that was the biggest reason why accessibility and availability of devices, that issue was less critical in our context.
Thanks, Manish. Jacob, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to add something, I guess, to what Manish was saying about engaging stakeholders. I'd probably take it a step further and talk around actually entering a dialogue with people about exploring ways change could occur. I think I've seen a lot of change being implemented where a decision is made by a group to change things. They come in and say, here's how we're doing it, and that becomes the engagement. But then people feel like they're being told what's happening, and that's maybe where resistance comes. So I'm not a change management expert by any means, but for Ammar and I, this was genuinely from day one. Ammar saying, hey, why don't we try and do it? Could we do it like this? It could look like that. What do you think? And we went back and forth multiple times. We engaged with examiners and said, hey, we're thinking of building something like this. Here's a mock-up. Do you think that could work? Could that work? And being genuinely open to feedback and dialogue. And, in all those testing phases of trying to change something, really engaging with people, rather than telling them what's happening and then listening to their feedback and saying, thank you, we've heard you now. So that's my take on it. Hope that helps.
I can add to that, Jacob, I think what the three speakers, I think that ties what Manish and what Dee and what we've done. I think what ties it all together is that obsession over the user experience. And the way we achieved that was, from a technical standpoint, was with that continuous integration, development and deployment pipeline. So we had automated tests running on everything. So when a panelist said, I want to be able to comment on items, we could deploy that feature and they could refresh and log in and be able to use that feature. Whereas a lot of platforms, there's downtime, it takes months and months to deploy features. We're responding to feature requests within days. And I think that got the engagement going. And I think that's what Manish points out with mobile. We had to do the same thing. We had a study where 70% of panelists were on mobile, and we just made a mobile interface for Angoff Yes No, and it worked extremely well. But we're able to respond to our users' needs and obsess over that.
Thanks for that, Matthew. I think that's really important. I think one of the things that we've looked at, and I've touched on already about this sort of digital divide, is we have to make sure that we don't design assessments, we don't design technology and use technology that we want to use. And actually, we need to think about the candidates, and certainly for the British Council, what we do globally is, mobile use or mobile ownership is so much higher than, laptop and desktop and things like this, really. So where we can think about those multiple use type of platforms we can use, how we can make sure we can support those candidates in that way, and not just assume that everyone will do things in the way that we want to do them, because that's not going to work. So that's really important. Dee, did you have anything else to add to in answer to Matt's question?
Thanks, Paul. I think just to endorse what's already been said, I mean, again, we operated at pace. We did try and do, some consultation around that. We did do limited piling with a selection of our learning partners. But on your point before, yeah, if we were to change an assessment, again, that would be much more extensive. We'd pilot, we'd do mocks and so on. But yeah, that stakeholder engagement, as other people have said, yeah, it's so important. And I think also lessons learned for us is really to make accessible to all the stakeholders the reasons for the change and the benefits of the change. And I think I said this in response to Matt's question before, sometimes what is obvious to us is understanding the requirements of the assessment, does need explaining. As I say, one of the challenges we had was to get across the perception that an open book was going to be much easier than the previous form of assessment. And of course, as soon as we put some example questions out there, and particularly as soon as the first assessment was in place, they realized that wasn't the case. But yeah, to get more of that information out in advance and that stakeholder buy-in and understanding before, yeah, absolutely agree with you and the other presenters.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Dee.
Thank you.
Matthew, I'm going to hand back to you now. I think we've got 2 minutes left. I'm not sure if you've got some final housekeeping you want to cover off.
No, actually not a lot. So we can have another question if you'd like. Anybody would like to put up their hand and use a microphone to ask a last minute question, you're welcome to do that too. We have got the 2 minutes left. Okay, I'll ask a question. How do people feel, I guess a question to any of the, probably mainly Manish and Deep, about if you're having the online invigilated exams, how do you feel about the difference between institutional employed people doing the online invigilation versus people employed by outsourcers? Have you noticed any differences in yours? I mean, we have run similar operations and we came to the conclusion that in-house was best. But I'd like to hear your views on, particularly from Manish and Deep, if that's the way you went.
So yes, I think that resonates with our experience. Only thing is that I will want to make a differentiation between totally outsourced and those who are permanently engaged, rather than with the university or without the university. So often we will find that some of the proctors are part-time proctors. They are not full-time engaged into proctoring activities. And we found that there was a significant drop in the quality of proctoring by people who are not doing it day in, day out. So if there is somebody who is permanently enrolled, whether it is with the agency or with the university, we found their level of proctoring to be better than compared to somebody who was coming in for a few days in the month to proctor, depending upon who's offering him to proctor. And positively, what we had done was we identified the people who were better at proctoring and made them supervisors or able to, level senior proctors, you could call them. And these people had the other proctors, and so that's the thing that I was talking about, proctoring the proctors. So there was a hierarchy of 3 levels which we were able to leverage to be able to make sure that the quality overall was uniform.
Yep. Thank you, Manish. Dee, do you have any comments on that? I'm not sure how your system works, but it sounds like you're doing something similar.
Hi, yeah, no, we're not Procter at the minute. I guess the similarity for us is the undertaking of the closing interviews, which just because of the scale and volume of that is done with our learning partners. But yeah, there's quality assurance around that, and we have that similar hierarchy in place. So I think, yeah, what is important is that consistency, just processes in place to make sure everybody is applying, you know, whether it's proctoring, closing interviews, that there's some QA around that to standardise the approach.
Thank you very much, folks. We are now at the hour, so thank you for joining for the session. Just a quick plug for the next one. Our next webinar for Transforming Assessment will be on the 3rd of August. It'll be talking about an e-portfolio approach to knowledge sharing and e-assessment of competencies development. So please look out for that one. You can register right now if you like on our Transforming Assessment website. But thank you very much to Paul and Dee, Ammar, Jacob, Manish for your excellent presentations today. And we will say goodbye and good night or good morning, wherever you are.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.